When they censor you and deplatform you, they can then steal your identity and misrepresent what you've said and done and then build a straw man and transferring the power to themselves. That's the New World Order. That's globalism.
It's actually the Old World Order.
It is. You're right.
It's really just the Old World Order in New World clothing. Don't let anybody hold you back.
Amen.
Just do it.
Presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy.
Vivek Ramaswamy, Republican running for president.
We should not be apologetic to stand up and speak for the truth. Let's talk truth.
I'm talking today to somebody who I'm meeting for the first time. I met him a few minutes ago for the first time. I actually don't know a lot about him. The number one thing I know about him is that everybody has told me not to talk to him, which is what made me want to actually sit down and talk to him. The United States of America were founded on free speech and open debate. It's in the First Amendment for a reason. And so, you know what? It's wrong that we've become a culture that wants to censor free speech and open debate. And I think that part of the American way of life is we don't just embrace moderate ideals. That is an extreme idea. The idea that you get to speak your mind as long as I get to in return. That's a wild idea. For most of human history, it was done the other way. And that's what makes America great. That's what makes America itself. And so if somebody tells me, don't listen to this person, my reaction is, you know what? I'm going to listen to them. I'm going to keep an open mind and hear what every person has to say because I'm a human being. Each of us as Americans is a human being, and we can judge for ourselves what we believe the actual right way forward is for our country. So with that said, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. I'm excited about it. Alex Jones, it's good to see you, man.
Vivek, thanks for doing this because when they censor you and deplatform you, they can then steal your identity and misrepresent what you've said and done and then build a straw man.
Yeah.
And that's why they fight so hard. 99% of the things they say about me aren't true. They never show a clip. Mm-hmm. They just say I've done these things I haven't done. Yeah. And it reminds me of them saying that Trump said after the thing that happened in Virginia, in Charlottesville, that he said Hispanics are horrible criminals, bad people. He didn't say that. Yeah. He said they're wonderful, good people, but there are also a lot of bad people coming across the border. They wouldn't show the clip. They would just say he said that. But he had a big enough bully pulpit to override that, and so it doubled the number of Hispanics from when he first got elected towards the end of his first term who understood that it was a lie, and they then embraced him because of that. But that was because he could show them the actual clip and show them that there'd been a lie. I'm not as big as Trump. I'm probably like 5% of the poll he's got. And so I have been successfully in many ways destroyed. I mean, they built another Alex Jones that's not me. And that's why they say don't ever interview Alex Jones because they're going to hear something that probably most people are going to agree with.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think that, I mean, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the fact that, you know, somebody came up, I don't know if it was someone from your team or someone who's part of your, you know, one of your followers or something suggested it. And I said, okay, well, several people are saying talk to this guy. Let's see if that's something we're open to. And then the reaction that I get is, no. This is a guy you don't want to talk to. It's going to be politically toxic for you. And my view is, no. We're the United States of America. So I have no idea if I'm going to agree with everything you're going to say or not. But
well, I mean, here's your comeback.
I'm curious about this. Yeah.
Here's your comeback. Lester Holt last week did a really important interview, or 2 weeks ago, with the Ayatollah Khomeini, the leader of Iran. Now, that guy is praising the attacks on Israel. It's terrible. I think he's a bad guy.
Yeah, Khomeini's not a good guy.
It doesn't mean I want World War III with him either, and Hezbollah,
Amen.
Who's got sleeper cells in America and our open border. But that said, everybody doesn't attack Lester Holt interviewing the leader of Iran, the religious dictator. Okay, so you see Hamas publishing videos of kidnapping Israelis, killing Israelis, dead bodies, whole houses shot up with dead families. That's posted on Twitter. That's okay. I actually think that's, I mean, I guess free speech, as long as it has an advisory on it. The kids don't see it. Okay, it's horrible. First Amendment, I don't agree with it, but I understand it needs to be shown.
That's where I'm at. Is free speech and open debate.
I haven't killed anybody. I'm not storming Israeli towns and murdering people in mass or coming on powered hang gliders, slaughtering people. But they don't want this to be heard because when I see your message, and I'm not kissing your ass, it's just true, you are the most informed, and they'll use this to attack you, but it's just true, geopolitically, you name it, compared to anybody I've ever basically interviewed it, and Tucker Carlson's super smart. And I would say has more charisma, but he's a close second. Your grasp, because I see the random questions you're asked, of just a wide spectrum of things is amazing. And your understanding that America, the idea of a free market competitive culture, is something the globalists can't have because they have a competing corporate oligarchy or tyranny and cashless society, social credit score they're setting up with the ESGs. Right. And that's the potential of America is so powerful because people aspire to that. America has to be wiped out with political correctness and all the rest of it so that the whole world can be leveled down to one giant third world population that BlackRock and the mega corporations can exploit and control and, quote, control our behavior, as Larry Fink said. So congratulations on the work you've done. The number one candidate I support is Donald Trump. If something happened to him, I would support you for president, and I'm very, very impressed. A lot of people say, well, 5 years ago, his views were a little bit different. Well, so were mine. And so people saying, well, he wasn't perfect in the past. Well, I'm not perfect today. We have to be ready as the world awakens to the real political system to have converts to liberty and freedom and Americana. And so the fact that you are a leading light really promoting the truth is amazing. And the few people that criticize you saying, well, he just showed up on the scene. Well, that's what happens with innovation and ideas. And of course, you didn't just show up on the scene, but exploded on the national scene. And so I really appreciate your campaign. I think it's the best thing out there. When you watch these Republican debates, they're unwatchable except for you. My listeners all agree. The crew all agrees that why don't we just have you up there for 2 hours instead? Because there's nothing but talking points and canned garbage from the rest of them. Because I can tell you run your campaign. All the rest of these people are told what to say, and they're looking at polls and numbers, and it's synthetic. With you, it's real.
They're puppets, and that's not even their fault. Actually, I've realized at first I would think I'm running against these other candidates. They're puppets of a broken super PAC puppet master system, and that's just the state of American politics today. And my view is, if you look at some of the stuff that I've written in my books, my first, book, Woke Inc., even years ago, I agree with 99% of what I said, but I've moved a little bit, and that's good. We're human beings. That's why I'm having this conversation. That's why people listen to contrary voices. Is we're human beings, not partisan hacks.
Well, exactly.
The world's got to respond to information and think about it and evolve our views. That's what it means to be a thinking human being, at least to me.
Well, and the globalists have come out in the open.
Yeah.
I was talking to Tucker Carlson just the other day. I went and visited him in Maine, and we did some hunting and stuff, and he was like, man, I'm more radical than you now. And we were sitting there talking because the world, it's out in the open. The globalists have taken the mask off. Yeah. And so I know you've been a pro-freedom of speech, liberty guy for a decade or more. All I'm saying is what you say is dead on. I sit there and I watch it, and I go, gosh, I wish I could nail it. And I'm not kissing your ass. It's true.
I appreciate
nail it. Nail it. And regardless of what happens, we need people like you, at the top of government that actually know the subjects and aren't just getting talking points from the donor class.
Yeah. So let's just, since we're meeting for the first time, just a few minutes. Your audience is probably very well familiar with this, but in your own words, it's just to hear it without, I didn't Google any of this beforehand, et cetera. I don't want to be biased. What's your journey to the views that you have now? What gets you going in terms of your mission? You're a clearly passionate guy, want to revive the essence of our founding ideals of the free exchange of ideas, not be controlled in a way that impedes the sovereignty of the United States. I know these topics animate you, but what personally got you to that place right now?
I had a lot of family that worked in the sharp end of the stick in U.S. intelligence, and they never really told me any of the classified or secret stuff. But like my uncle was high level, I ran Contra and a bunch of other stuff. And
oh, really? So I would have never guessed that. You're what, parents or uncles?
Just a lot of people, yeah.
Okay, a lot of people in your family were in U.S. intelligence.
Well, back during the 70s, 80s and stuff, before they went from HUMET to electronic intelligence, there was a mobilization of the population against the Russians and others.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I had a lot of family. If I went to a family reunion, it was like a Soldier of Fortune convention. And and they would just talk about what the government was doing, what was going on. They were patriots, but just like we see all these whistleblowers now in the government, they didn't like what was happening. So it's not that the government's our enemy, it's that criminals at the top have basically captured it. So when you're a child growing up hearing all this, I just kind of absorbed it. I wasn't even really listening to it until later I realized how true it was. And then I started to go to college a little bit, but I was already very successful in business by the time I was like 19 as a salesman. And boom, I saw really this anti-American race-based brainwashing that we see out in the open now, but it was going on here in Austin on the college campuses. And so I decided,
And when was this? Just so we track the
this
time.
is in about 1993.
Okay.
And I've been on air since 1994, officially 95.
Okay. But you were a salesman before that. You started college. Where was college? Where was that at?
I just went to local community college.
Here in Austin?
I was figuring out what I wanted to do.
Here in Austin.
Absolutely. I mean,
But you were already a successful salesman, so then you decided to find your way out of college.
yeah, I'd had jobs when I was a kid. My dad had money and stuff. My parents were successful, and I would say I want new shoes. I want I want to get a new wakeboard. Because we were living on the lake, and my dad would say, well, then go get a job. So from the time I was about 13, I had jobs, and then I got into different sales. But the biggest thing is I was selling gym memberships and stuff when I was 18, and I was making $150,000 a year, $200,000 a year. And then I was going to community college, figuring out if I wanted to go to main college, and it was just insane. I went and sat in on some UT courses on RTF, radio, television, films. I thought I might want to do that because I wanted to be politically involved. And they were teaching 20-year-old stuff. I was like, you're not talking about the internet, these classes. Why am I here? Like, well, first you got to take all these other classes. So I started out on Access TV in 1994, got my own show in 95, got a website in 97, got a local radio show in 96, called up satellite companies, bought the equipment. The station let me put in the connection to the satellite, syndicated myself when I was...
You're in your early 20s just decided you're going to do all this
Syndicated myself at 22. Got on suddenly like 50-something radio stations. It was insane. Hit the national news immediately. Decided instead of selling coffee.
What were you talking about?
Well, instead of selling coffee mugs and like newsletters like other talk shows did to supplement their income, I said, I'm going to make films. And so I would go and show the UN taking over the national parks and show the UN signs and show what that treaty meant, that it was taking control of U.S. Land under UN treaties, kind of like the UN treaty on healthcare and things that's happening right now. And so I just basically exploded onto the underground scene with conservatives and people that were aware of what was going on. In about 1996, I was already reaching millions of people. And so it's been a long-term operation, 29 years on air.
Ever since?
Absolutely. We've, 9/11 happened, and I questioned 9/11. And I was on almost 200 radio stations. I've been offered, by major companies, the next big Rush Limbaugh style deal. I guess Glenn Beck took that deal. Nothing against him, overall great guy, really smart. And I went from almost 200 affiliates to 30-something affiliates in 1 month when 9/11 happened. And I wasn't for radical Islam, and I believe Islamists were involved, but I knew about the NORAD stand down. I knew about Building 7. I knew about a lot of the stuff that I was talking to police about that were on the ground, that they knew it was coming, bare minimum. Kind of like I'm against the attack on Israel, and Hamas is terrible, but something like 85% in major polls of Israelis think the government knew and let it happen now. So it's the same thing. But when I said that then, the radio network owners I was on, GCN, came to me and they said, listen, we just lost 50 affiliates today. They're all going to dump you if you don't stop. And I said, well, it's the truth. I'm going to keep questioning it. So that just shows I never did this for monetary gain or just to be popular, though I do need monetary operations to fund my operation and be free and independent. I'm not for sale. And so I've already been up and down. That's why when they deplatformed me and things and thought I would just give up, I didn't. Because I started out on Access Television. And so I've started from the very mailroom of media, and I've at one point in 2016, 17, much bigger show than Rush Limbaugh, much bigger show than Joe Rogan, undoubtedly the number one independent, or not even independent, media show in the country, over 30 million viewers and listeners. 2016, 2017.
Yeah, okay.
And then that's when they deplatformed me because I was just number one. I mean, every day over 25 million listeners conservatively. And so that's when they said, well, we got to stop this guy. And then that's when the attacks came. But I've survived that, and now we've rebuilt. And in many ways, we're stronger than ever. We're definitely more influential.
Yeah. Well, you said the motivation's not monetary. I do find that people who are successful, I can see you're passionate. What is that mission? What is it that calls you? I mean, you've been doing this now for a few decades now. You're clearly called by something. What is it?
Well, when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, friends and family would come to the house. My dad would be playing chess with them or poker, and I'd hear all these guys, FBI agents, Army colonels, spooks, talking about the New World Order and the global government, getting rid of the border and selling out America. and this plan for regional governments, and this plan for a computer to run everything. And then as I got older, I started seeing that in publications being pushed by the media. And then I read books by David Rockefeller and Henry Kissinger. And really, for a few years when I got out of high school, would actually go to the UT library and actually pull up the microfilm. They're like, they would have the head librarian come out and say, we've never seen a young person come and ask for this to be pulled. Why are you looking up the New York Times? And they weren't upset. They thought it was cool. And there I was reading the New York Times in the 1970s, David Rockefeller praising Mao Zedong and saying we need that here in America. Mao Zedong was the greatest mass murderer in history, about triple what Hitler and Stalin killed, more than what both men killed combined. So I really started reading their plans for global government, cashless society, depopulation, the Club of Rome. I learned about the Bilderberg Group. I learned about Bohemian Grove, all these weird rituals and things. So I said, well, let me see if this is real. So, in 2000, I snuck in there. And sure enough, right when they said the ritual happened, they did this weird mock human sacrifice, Faustian / Babylonian, Canaanite, Moloch ritual. And so it was really the adventure of it and the mystery of it, being told this when I was growing up, kind of ignoring it, then seeing a lot of what I was told come true, and then getting into the books of the establishment, but also reading books that were countering it and saying, I want to find out if this is true. I want to find out if they're really doing this. I want to find out I remember they had all these military drills all over Texas and the country with black helicopters in the mid-'90s. And when people would talk about it, they'd say that doesn't exist. So we got tips from the military, went and caught it on footage of them. They'd covertly lease a building that was going to be demolished later. Then they'd basically attack it and blow it up. And they're training. It's okay. They need new training grounds. But then they would deny in the little town where it happened, or even the big city, that it just happened. So by then, we were catching it on video. And whereas people had caught it on video before, there wasn't really web streaming of video. 96, 97, 98, that was all coming on board. And so we would go catch footage of that. So, it was really like ghost hunting, but hunting real ghost. And so I was basically doing private, independent, pro-American intelligence work for the people, and it was just super exciting. And because I was so prominent early on and was on shortwave and satellite and a bunch of radio stations, all these old-timers sent me stuff. And the former head of the FBI in L.A. would come on the show and advise me, and General Benton K. Parton, the former head of the Air Force Weapons Development, would come on. And so I really, starting at about 96, 97, got the brain trust of all these heavy hitters who on their own dime would fly to Austin or drive in their RVs. The former head of the Star Wars program, Dr. Bob Bowman, they'd get in their RVs and drive from wherever they lived. And sometimes they'd stay at my house and we do a week on air, them just data dumping, because they've been trying to write books and magazine articles and little obscure things. And so I was thrown right in the middle of this excitement, and it was interesting and it was fun. And back then it was more academic. Yeah, the globalists were getting a lot of things done, but I'd read stuff in the mid-'90s about they planned to ban beef, and they planned to have a carbon credit, and they planned to track everywhere you go with switches in your cars, and they planned to listen to you through microphones in your cable box. And then we bust a cable box open with an engineer on my local TV show, and there'd be the microphone with the schematics and of course now they're like, oh, that's voice analysis, that's a voice prompt, but they didn't tell you for a decade that was in there. So it was just so exciting to be in a war in my own country against these multinational corporations that wanted to take America over. And so I was always saying, is it real? Is it real? And I got to tell you, 95% of what the old timers told me, because these old timers were just like my uncle and just like some other family, what they've been telling me, but a lot of these guys were even higher up in it. And so I learned from people that were on the inside what was going on. So I had a long education over the last 29 years. This has really been an education. And so I just get deeper and deeper into my understanding of how it all interconnects.
What I'm hearing is the story of a journalist.
Yes.
A guy who's curious, records things, describes them, and shares them with people. Now, let me ask you a question. I'll tell you where I'm going with this. You're in this to seek underlying truth that other people aren't getting to. That's what I'm hearing you and telling your story. Now, once in a while, that means you're going to find something that looks like it's going to be one way. It wasn't exactly the way you thought, and so maybe you were wrong.
I've made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, and so what do you do in that scenario? Let's say you're a journalist, because I know how mainstream media deals with it right now. That's a different way. They sweep it under the rug. Let's say you're wrong, and you realize that you had one thesis and you were getting to the bottom of it, but then you get to the hard facts and you say, hey, you were wrong about it. Give me an example of where that happened, actually. I think that's kind of interesting
Well,
to hear you talk about.
Also, what I've noticed is they've had a lot of national TV characters like Homeland and the newer X-Files that came out in 2016 where they admit it's based on me. And,
Oh, really?
And
Homeland?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And a bunch of them. You can look it up. And they'll create this straw man where I'm lying on purpose and I'm getting things wrong on purpose. I never admit I'm wrong. I always, when I said I thought I knew something and I was wrong, I always admitted it. And so,
Give me an example.
in the case of Sandy Hook, long before they sued me, long before they came after me, I'd barely talked about it. If you look at my live as a timeline, at first I thought it was official and thought it happened. Then some professors and people came out with a bunch of anomalies and thought it might have been staged. Just like people are questioning whether Hamas cut babies' heads off right now. Yeah. You know, that's the big thing going on. And I don't think there's really proof to that. But they blow them up, they shoot them. It's the same thing. So now people are on Twitter saying, oh, we need to sue the people that said they cut babies' heads off. Or we need to sue the people that say it didn't happen because you're not allowed to debate, was Jussie Smollett really attacked, which we now know that was fake, or you know, so many of these other events like Operation Northwoods and things where the government did plan to do atrocities or did plan to stage atrocities and blame it on an enemy. And so with that, I started saying, 2 or 3 years before I got sued, I said, I don't want to talk about this. I think the people that said this, it turns out, are lunatics. I think the info they put out, they were professors and school safety experts. I found some of what they said, the anomalies, wasn't true. I think school shootings happen. And because every time there was a school shooting, people would say, Alex Jones is saying this isn't happening, whether it was Parkland, any of that. So I was saying, no, I think this is happening. And then the media and the system went, oh, he's weak on that, because they would sweep it under the rug if they were wrong. Let's get him. So then they resurrected it. I was deplatformed for other stuff. I mean, look it up. Then they resurrected it and then blew up a straw man of things I didn't say or do with no proof. I went to their houses, sent people to their houses, peed on graves, no proof. Then they sue me. They get all the discovery.
Did you ever do any of those things?
No, of course not. It's
fair to ask.
Never done. Of course not.
Yeah.
Never even been to Connecticut till I was there for court.
So where are they getting this kind of nonsense? Just make it up.
I mean, that's all. The thing is, I cover stories and then I move on. Mm-hmm. So they introduced in court like 22 minutes of video of me over 10 years on Sandy Hook. That was it. It was not something we made money off of. It was not something that was even a big deal. We had like one debate where somebody thought it happened, didn't thought it happened to two newspaper editors. Callers were calling about it sometimes. It was a big viral story up front. People questioned it like 11 years ago. I didn't get sued for like 6 years later.
Until long after you had already said, hey, I wasn't necessarily right on that one. I wasn't.
No, I said I think shootings happen. I think it happened. And I mean, if people track this, it's just amazing how it works.
So you it's interesting. So this is years later, after you admitted you were wrong on it, that they chose to come after you.
Yes, and then the judges in Texas and Connecticut defaulted me, which is supposed to be if you never show up for court and you're not there, they can default you. And this is all on the record. Just like the Trump judge, they passed a law in New York. So it's not called a default, but it's the same thing. The judge doesn't give him a jury, and the judge has found Trump in the real estate fraud case, has found him guilty. Got the loans, paid the loans. Obviously, Mar-a-Lago is not worth $18 million. It's worth hundreds of millions. The judge says, no, it's not. I find that fraud. And the appeals court had to block him taking his hotels and golf courses in New York. One judge, no jury, said, I'm taking everything you've got in New York, and we're going to take more stuff outside the state. And Trump said, I would like a jury trial. And they said, no. So I had a jury trial, but they found me guilty, the judge did, and they would not let us put on evidence. It was only a trial on damages. They put on a financial expert and said he's worth $400 million. I had like $3 million in the bank at the time, our emergency backup money. That's gone now. And then they put me through, they told the bankruptcy court I had all this money. And of course, it was proven I told the truth. Obviously, I go to jail if I lied in there. And they don't care because they said, we want to take him off the air. We want to silence him. We want to end his free speech. These are quotes that they said in Connecticut, in the court, outside the court, and in Texas, inside, outside the court. So, I want to move on from that because there's bigger things than me. But this weaponization of the judiciary, Giuliani was basically defaulted in New York because there wasn't evidence they were asking for. The judge just said, you're guilty. Fox, in its January 6th
What is
case.
this defaulting business?
They have in law.
What does that mean?
A default means it's called.
I should know this.
It's called the death penalty.
being somebody who
you shouldn't know it
as a
because
lawyer,
it's not supposed to be used.
But I don't know about it.
It's called a death penalty sanction.
Okay.
And so if they say you don't participate in a civil trial, the judge can find you guilty by default. They still have to have a trial on the damages. They didn't even give me a real trial on the damages. So this is a fraud on America and is very dangerous. And they're defaulting people across the board now.
If you don't show up.
Yeah, but I did. And then and with me, they said, well, you didn't give us the discovery. Because it didn't exist. They said, show us the marketing material for Sandy Hook. I don't do marketing material for shows. I look at a bunch of news articles, some video clips. I go on air. I didn't do a marketing study with you for this.
This is new to me.
We talked for 2 minutes. We talked for 2 minutes before we went on air, right?
You maybe 2 minutes, a minute, you know.
A minute and a half. He walks in, boom, sits down.
Just get on there. Yeah. But
no.
This is new
the
to
judge
me,
says,
though.
give me the marketing material. Vivek, tell me about your plan with Alex. Tell me about the secret plans you guys had in this thing. All the marketing, all the Google Analytics. Tell me about your meeting.
Yeah, it's
Wait a minute. You're not going to give me the evidence. You're defaulted.
I'm just gonna say I'm personally a little bit blushing here. I don't even know about this legal procedure.
That's because they're not supposed to use it.
But they're literally so it's not even that you don't show up and you default.
That's what it's supposed to be.
If you're not participating in the process,
yes,
according to the standards that they set,
and they set a bar you can't reach.
Judge, I'm going to go back and learn the heck about this because I mean, if what you described is true, that is a real danger to the integrity of the judicial system. I'm
that's the
go
cutting edge.
Independently learn about this myself. But the point is, they can default you even if the judge deems you not actively or sufficiently participating in discovery.
Yes.
In a civil trial. Depends on which state, I suppose.
And just like I was telling people, hey, the Justice Department, the CIA are involved. It was in government documents running the censorship of us. And in the last 6 months it came out in Congress, people thought, oh, yeah, I know it's on the air showing them the legislation, showing them the funding, for the ministries of truth and all this stuff. I'm telling people they're defaulting everybody. They defaulted Trump by the law. How does a judge do this and take what you've got? They're defaulting everybody else where the judge finds you guilty. So like you see the headlines, Trump already guilty in New York.
And then it's just jury trial for damages.
Yes, but in Trump's case, just like they passed the law so that woman could sue him saying he sexually assaulted her, and they changed the law to go back decades, New York has passed a law where judges, it's not even default, it's a new form of it, where the judge just says you don't get a jury trial.
See, this one's very concerning to me because, I mean, a lot of what's happened in the country is very concerning, but the judicial system is the last bastion of protection.
Totally weaponized.
It's the last frontier for us to be able to say, okay, executive branch badly taken over by three-letter agencies that nobody ever elected with any backstop of political accountability. Forget about Congress. Think about prosecutorial power in the executive branch abused. But the judicial system is our last best hope for the last ultimate line of defense. But if that itself can sidestep basic principles of confronting witnesses, basic principles of being judged by a jury of your peers rather than by a single judge. This is basic First Amendment, it was a Bill of Rights.
And that's why they still did
stuff.
That's why they still did the damages show trial where people said his lawyers are terrible. Alex Jones is. No, they weren't. They were given a list of things like you can't say you're innocent. You can't say you can't question the witnesses about this or that. So when they're up there with here's an example. There was an FBI agent in Connecticut, never saw his name, never showed his picture, never talked about him. I didn't talk about him. He got up there and said, I got one phone call by somebody asking if I was really an FBI agent because he was there without his FBI vest at Sandy Hook, holding a gun by the barrel. The internet questioned him. I didn't know who he was. He sued me on $90+ million. Never said his name. So here's how this works. With most people, I can come on here, and if people like this, they go, oh, I'll go find Alex Jones' show on X or on Facebook or on the podcasting thing. I've been delisted from everywhere. So I have to sit here and point out to viewers, if you want to find what I'm actually saying, Infowars.com/show. And in normal etiquette for a talk show, that's like somebody pitching themselves. No, I'm isolated, surrounded, can only communicate when people like you let me out of prison to walk in the yard for a little while. And then I can desperately try to, get messages out by smoke signals to people about what's happening to me, which they admit is the model to shut everybody else down. So you're a smart guy, one of the smartest, and everybody knows that's true. I'm not just saying it. I hope you'll go look into this, and I hope you'll find out about it because it is incredible. It is because
I've already learned something today. That's frightening. Now,
there's so many bigger things than me. I mean, there's these wars, and there's the cashless society, and the open borders, and and all the race baiting. I mean, we're being divided and conquered. That's why your message of coming together to celebrate our hard-fought American freedoms is so essential.
well, one of the things that's true about the American way is that we're not founded on moderate ideals, right? The ideals that set this country into motion. I love that we have a map behind us, right? Old world England had a different view. And let's just smoke it out. We could say agree or disagree before we get to the agree or disagree. At least let's get the best version of the view on the table, which is that people, ordinary people, cannot be trusted to sort out their differences on climate change or racial injustice or whatever it was back in that era for their own good. It's not just that the kings or the aristocrats say, hey, I want to enrich myself and do it at the expense of the people. That's what many who are frustrated with monarchy might say.
It's an arrogance.
But it's actually an arrogance founded in what they think of as benevolence, right? Which is to say that, no, we're not doing this for us, for our power. And we'll come to the modern version of this in a second. We're doing this for the sake of people who cannot be trusted and left to their own devices because it's for them we're doing it, which is even more dangerous than somebody who comes in and says, oh, we're just doing it for my own private personal gain. No. That's not the view. The view is the people cannot be trusted to sort out their differences through free speech. I mean, the idea you get to speak your mind as long as I get to in return. The idea that there's a republic where your
and that's
vote
why
and my
they
vote
can't
count
compete
equally.
Because the rest of the world starts aspiring to that. You've got to bring that down so people stop aspiring so that British Empire model, now the BlackRock global banking empire, which they admit with the ESGs, everything, you're absolutely dead on. And if you expand on that.
But I just want to get the view on the table so people understand, because there's a lot wrong with it. But at least to understand, put yourself, the way I am, Alex, is you can try something on like a set of clothes.
I agree.
And then see if
any
it
good
fits.
general gets in the mind of the enemy.
Yes, yeah. And then you say, okay, here, I got to understand why it fits. I got to really try it on. Understand why it doesn't fit. Then it doesn't fit, you put it back on the rack. Then you understand your own views
Well, that's
better.
right. This laissez-faire competitive system is way more sexy. And in 1950, we had half the world's wealth. We were 4% of the population. Now we become globalists and crony capitalists. We're
Give me those
losing that
facts again.
wealth.
Sorry, you're going pretty fast there. That sounds interesting.
In 1950, the United States had half the wealth in the world.
Is that right?
Because of our invention.
Immediately post-World War II.
Yeah, absolutely. Post-World War II, we had half the world's wealth, and we were 4% of the world's population.
As measured by GDP, probably.
Measured by GDP. So
Half
that's
the GDP of the world. What is it today? I should know these things.
It's gone down a lot. I think it's in the late high 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, sounds about right. Maybe a quarter to a third.
I haven't looked at it in a while, but what I'm getting at here is what you said is so dead on. In fact, I need to make that point more. You can pull these clips up. Remember when Obama went to Latin America the last few months of his administration.
Term, yep.
Then he went to a bunch of countries in Africa, and he gave the same speech, Vivek, in every country.
What did he say?
He said, quote, you can't have cars and air conditioning. The world's going to heat up and burn up. Now, here's a guy flying on a giant jet with dozens of aircraft. After that, he has private jets. He has houses at basically sea level in Martha's Vineyard and Hawaii, though he said we were already supposed to be underwater by 2017, though they keep just buying Al Gore, all of them, oceanfront property, right, not up on cliffs or something, like Martha's Vineyard.
They're bearing that cross.
Absolutely.
They're bearing that cross for the rest of us.
Well, I mean, that's it. They're on private jets, people like Ted Turner has like 5 kids. He says, I want to depopulate 90% of the world's population. Look it up. Him on Charlie Rose. Well, he has 5 kids. He has jets. He has palatial compounds. But you in Africa, you can't aspire. You need to live in this will eat the bugs, WEF, rationing for the good of the earth while the ruling class lives like kings and goes around in their giant super yachts.
To mountaintops in Davos.
With carbon footprints thousands of times an American, and an American's carbon footprint is 30, 40, 50 times than somebody in Congo.
Yep.
So in Congo, you don't get anything. And so it's the decision to not industrialize those countries And that's how they control third world countries. And then they sit back and say, well, that's why you're in squalor, because you're not as good as us. We're going to take care of you. But now that same inherent elitism beyond racism is now being used against the West, and they're now impoverishing the West as a political tool of control.
Yeah, so this is the modern old world European ugly monster rearing its head again.
Yes.
Which is fascinating, right? Because we fought a revolution. We thought that in 1776, we said on this side of 1776, on this side of the Atlantic, we do things differently. Where, you know what, we the people do sort out our differences in a constitutional republic where every citizen's voice and vote counts equally with free speech and open debate. That's what we thought. And every little while, that ugly monster rears its head again. World War I was in some ways the physical conflict of that old world European monarchical
Well, that was because
worldview.
the British Empire, who was the villain in that war, not in World War II, Hitler was the bad guy there after the Versailles Treaty, they literally said the German problem, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, because it was dominant in industry, science. It was taken over not with the military, but with all of its inventions. So it was kind of the new America, but it was run by another royal family. So they had to kill the Archduke Franz Ferdinand and start World War I, so you're dead on.
And so this battle plays itself out every century or so in different ways. And I think right now we live in another one of these 1776 moments.
Fourth turning.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. I'm familiar with the.
It's dead on.
the
And let's use the analogy of America, the United States, and India. I call it, I've been saying this for 20 plus years, that's why they do want me off air. You ask, what do I stand for? Americana, freedom, soft power, people aspiring to be like America, making us the best.
American exceptionalism.
American exceptionalism. Take India. Controlled by the British, kick them out, now wildly successful because you guys actually got control of your government, had your own resources. Same thing. I would call that 1776 worldwide. And that's not America controlling things. It's the idea of freedom, idea of the people, the idea of loving your nation, empowering the individual, and a meritocracy where, because I looked at who used to be in our,
meritocracy, what a word. Well, it's a bad word these days.
It is. Well, I go back and I look at World War II. And almost all of our generals got there through meritocracy and grew up on little farms or in poor areas of cities. And there were and there was almost nobody whose dad or granddad was an admiral who was there. In fact, it was almost discrimination against the aristocracy was what America was doing, because George Washington was being discriminated against by the aristocracy, even though he was really part of it. He was mad. That was one of the big reasons that even the, quote, elites of America fought the British elites, because they were tired of saying, well, I'm actually your cousin, but I'm not a lord, so I can't ship products out of the colonies. And so if the rich guys want freedom, and they finally set up for themselves, that will have to trickle down. And that's why they can point at America's beginning and say we weren't perfect. But it was the idea of the process. Yeah. And as more people get into that, that's the victory. So now you look at who is the leaders of the military. They'll have some token people. Oh, look, a black guy, a white lady or whatever. But if you actually look, it's a bunch of blue bloods whose grandfathers were in control at the end of World War II when America absorbed the British Empire and became this new globalist system. So America is like the engine and the brain, along with the British intelligence, of this very evil thing. I love America. I've got Jones. I've got a Welsh last name. I'm not an Anglophile, but I'm not an Anglophobe. But the system of the British Empire and the ghost of it through BlackRock and its Royal Institute of International Affairs and the CFR and these corporate management boards are devolving the governments while they expand them and transferring the power to themselves. That's the New World Order. That's globalism.
But it's actually the Old World Order.
It is. You're right.
It's really just the Old World Order in New World clothing.
That's exactly it.
And that's what we got to understand. And so the optimistic side of me says that what a special time it would have been to be alive in the spring of 1776. It was a special time to be alive. You got Thomas Jefferson, the age of 33. People say I'm old. I'm young. Well, I'm old compared to Thomas Jefferson. He was 33 when he wrote the Declaration of Independence.
Genius.
You have people who were the pioneers, the explorers, the unafraid, that said, you know what, we are going to not just be victimized by this. We're going to chart a new way forward.
Well, 33
That's
was
the
old.
moment we live in.
I totally agree. 33 was old back then because a lot of people died young. You either die young or live a really long time, but the average was we didn't live as long. And you're absolutely right. People were married by 16. People were explorers by 16. And Thomas Jefferson lived a long time, but by 33, he was leading a revolution against an empire that had never been defeated.
And an inventor, and he was inventing things. He was an engineer. He invented the swivel chair, invented a bunch of other things too, while he's writing the Declaration of Independence. That spirit in some ways, would history have produced the Thomas Jeffersons and the Alexander Hamiltons of the world if it weren't for the fact that they had this oppressive regime to stand up against? I think probably not.
No, I totally agree. You're talking about the
so this is an opportunity, the moment we live in. Because I am sick and tired, even myself, of you may have, I don't know if you've read some of the books I've written or anything like this, of pointing out the problem. I've done plenty of that. But this is our opportunity now. We're not just going to throw up our hands and complain about it.
Oh,
this is our moment to revive.
I agree. My wife's a huge fan.
Thank you. Tell her thank you. What's her name?
Erica.
Erica, tell her thank you.
She almost got up this morning, but we don't have anybody to take care of my daughter. She's got to get her to school. But
how old's your daughter?
6.5.
Oh, it's good age. You have one or...
I've got 4 children, 3 with my first wife and then 1 with her.
Oh, good
She's
for you.
6.5. But I don't mean to interrupt. You're so dead on. I see you talk about this is our 1776 moment.
I really mean that.
This is an opportunity. It is.
Yeah.
Instead of being the leftist mind of we're being attacked, we're being oppressed, let's give up and complain. Let's innovate. Let's out-communicate. Let's use this pressure like lifting weights or jogging or climbing a mountain to get stronger. That which doesn't kill me only makes me stronger, to quote Nietzsche.
Yes.
And it's
yes.
totally true. And this is 1776 part 2 for the whole world. And it's very exciting.
You know, and I think we got to go through stages of this. And you've been doing this in my own corner of the world. I've been doing this to point out the problem and see it with clear eyes. You can't win a war unless you know that you're in one. That's the first step, okay?
Boom.
And you got a bunch of people on that Republican Party stage that have no clue. I mean, these are clueless
They don't even
puppets.
know what exactly. They're just, I'm a politician.
They have no clue.
I want to be rich and powerful.
Here are my super PAC provided talking points. Literally,
they're like going to a whorehouse and the whores are lined up showing you what they got and telling you their specialty. I mean, they're literally in front of the corporation saying, "I'm good at this. I'm good at that. I will."
Mother's milk for them. Money is the mother's milk of politics. So put them to one side. But my view is, you can't win a war unless you know you're in one. And part of my job has been laying out the weaponization of financial markets, the weaponization of our capital, the weaponization of basically every sphere of our lives. This fringe minority view has taken over institutions from K through 12 education to our universities, to Wall Street, to Silicon Valley, to our U.S. military. Now, I think it's worth pausing. I was going to get to the positive part. Before I do that, I think it's worth answering the question of why this other side has managed to take over every institution. And I have an unconventional theory of this one, Alex. I think that it's worth seeing. You know, you and I may be, we're conservative. People may classify us as being in the right, but take those labels off.
I'm
for
a
second.
populist.
I mean, just take. I hate labels. They're not useful.
I agree.
They're reductionist. So let's just look at the substance of this. People who would have identified as being on the old left, right? Occupy Wall Street, challenging the bailouts. The old left version of break up big tech. The old left that was critical of colleges charging way too much money for providing far less in return. The people who have criticized schools in the inner cities, failing to serve black kids in the inner city or whatever. Even our military, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, a lot of that criticism used to come from what was perceived to be the old left. What happened was each of those institutions, what they did was, if you're Wall Street, you don't want to occupy Wall Street, but I'll do the new woke stuff, diversity, inclusion, climate change, great. If you're Silicon Valley, I don't like the left-wing break up big tech. I'll censor hate speech and misinformation as you define it, but I don't do it for free, as long as I get to get you off my back. The U.S. military, if you're Mark Milley, you don't want to talk about accountability for Iraq and Afghanistan. Forget about that. I'll talk about white rage and systemic racism. So part of this is a deeper arranged marriage. It's more like, use the whorehouse analogy, it's more like mutual prostitution.
Well, that's right.
Between two strange bedfellows.
That's right. The power structure has failed. They're not the aristocrats that are doing it for their own good. They know they're a fraud. The system's coming apart. And
they know it's a fraud, but it's an arranged marriage that allows them to keep their power intact.
That's
it. So anyway, you've talked about similar
this
themes.
Happened, though?
Yeah.
Look, there's a meme. It's totally true. History shows it. Bad times make hard men make good times make weak men make bad times.
Yeah.
It's a cycle. So a lot of it is our fault. We can't just blame the globalists and the aristocracy.
Thank you.
Their rot is our rot. And so
that's what I'm talking about.
There's so much entertainment, so much food.
We got to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, why is it that we bend the knee? Because yes, when the Israelites escape from the Pharaoh, they're lost in the desert, yet to find the promised land. What did they say? We want to go back and be ruled by the Pharaoh.
That's right.
And so we can complain about the Pharaoh all we want, and it exists. the global ESG movement, modern stakeholder.
But we have to build our own system. That's actually
what is it that makes us want to bend the knee?
That's actually what this book, The Great Awakening, comes out next week. It's available on InfoWars right now, pre-order. This is a really important book, Defeating the Globalist and Launching the Next Great Renaissance. I wasn't even going to bring the book up till you brought this up. This book is not just about how they're bad, and that's half the book. The rest is solutions. So I'm really impressed with your work and research. I hope you'll read it.
I'm going to take a copy?
Please, sir.
It's for me? All right.
Take a couple for your crew as well. So
absolutely, I'm going to.
But I mean, you're totally nailing it, and I watch and listen to you.
Yeah.
That's how I was able to steal your thunder and say you're absolutely. In fact, you influenced this book. In me hearing you, we've got to talk more about solutions. And I was already on that kick, but you're right. I was like, I got to write a book about solutions and the system we can build that's alternate.
This is the moment now.
Yeah,
now
we
is our
can't just
moment
say
to do
blow
it.
this up. We got to have
an alternative vision
Yes.
of our own, right? So I think that for me, and it doesn't mean we can have competing visions. This is the conversation we need to have. If the left is feeding us race, gender, sexuality, climate, how about reviving the individual?
Yes.
How about the family?
Yes.
Nation. That not some nebulous global citizen fighting climate change. I'm a citizen of this nation, the United States of America, and I'm proud of it. I'm not going to apologize for it. And by the way, God, I think, plays a big role in this too. I think the revival of faith is something that
I totally
can
agree
unite
with
us
that.
as
That's
a
what the
country.
book's about. And again, I'm not against gay people, rainbow flag stuff, but it's the new flag. They're even talking about getting rid of the American flag. They're now trying to take George Washington's statue down in New York. They're now doing all of this. And this is all unfolding, and we're having our symbols that recognize who we are and what we stand for away from us and giving us a new one that is a government, corporate-directed sex cult. I don't care if it was a heterosexual cult showing me their flag and taking down our flag and telling my kids about it. I mean, if it was some new flag about NASCAR, I'm not against NASCAR, but it was NASCAR stuff everywhere, and them telling my kids pledge allegiance to NASCAR, I'd say this is a NASCAR cult. Get it out of here. And what it is,
cult is interesting. It's an interesting use of the word. So a cult is a religion that has not withstood the test of time. Okay? So it's short term. And so there's an old saying, actually, I think it came from Blaise Pascal. He was a scientist of all things, but he said if there's a hole the size of God in your heart and God does not fill it, something else will instead.
Exactly.
And my civic version of
they've
that,
kicked God out, and now
some other poison fills the void.
demon is filling it.
And so my version of that in a civic sense is if we don't pledge allegiance to the American flag or to a true flag of our nation, we're going to pledge allegiance to a different flag instead. I've said that as a matter of analogy, but now literally there are different flags. I mean, the transgender
and there's
flag.
more and more and more. We're being divided and conquered.
That's right.
Where everybody, and they call it the broken coalition strategy. This came out in the Clinton documents in their library in Little Rock. And as they're about to win the presidency, they're having meetings. The papers are public now. We've got to create the broken coalition strategy nationwide where no group can be powerful and organized. So the parliamentary system's weak because look at Justin Trudeau. He only gets 30% of the vote, but he has coalitions with the broken coalition strategy to then have the tyranny of different minorities getting together against the majority.
It's such an interesting invocation of that because that describes our current moment right now in this country. We have, in the name of protecting against a tyranny of the majority, we have created a new tyranny of the minority.
Exactly.
And that minority has captured every institution.
And that's what you told the transgender. See, I'm quoting you back. You've taught me a lot.
You remember that.
And I got to tell you,
you,
Viv, of course I do. I watch you every day. You and Tucker Carlson are two of my favorite people. And I tell my listeners who are real owly and don't trust the system, they're like, well, how do we know this guy's good? And I'm like, there's no way Vivek's saying all these things. That's like high noon or a holy water to a vampire. He's not one of them. You do not say these things. This irrevocably damages the lie. He is good by the very fruit of the tree, as Christ said.
And my view is people should be skeptical.
It's fine to be skeptical.
I always encourage skepticism, but we got to do something about.
We got to move on.
We got to do something about.
I mean, take RFK Jr. I would say I agree with about 90% of him. I agree with about 99% of you. Tucker Carlson.
His climate stuff is a little bit off the reservation.
Well, he used to say we're going to arrest people that question this.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to walk that back. He's got something, but he says it's out of context, and he was talking about corporations that lie, like cigarette.
But still, I think the climate agenda itself is a hoax.
Oh, of course it is.
Climate
change is a constant.
I think any person who leads the United States going forward cannot be somebody who accepts the premises of the climate change agenda as a fixed principle for how we run
It's
this
a
country.
fear-mongering for the cult.
It's disqualifying
to make you
for the
think
US.
you're bad,
Yeah.
to give control of your life over to them. And let me just say something briefly here. I'm not a petroleum geologist, but I have family that is. They told me this 30 years ago. It's not coming from dead whales and dead dinosaurs. They now have the devices and systems, and they keep finding oil deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, 50, 60,000 feet, all the way down to the mantle, through the crust, and they're hitting oil and gas deposits that are so big, they don't have pipes that can contain what's coming up. And what it is if you look at Mars, scientists now believe that it once had an atmosphere, but this is a short science lesson, but it once had an atmosphere, but its gravity wasn't big enough to hold the atmosphere, and it had water. We know there's water under the surface. There's water under the surface of the moon. That's been confirmed. India confirmed that. What our folks confirmed back in the 60s. So that's going on. So there's actually giant reserves, and they're saying these gases are bad. The Earth used to have way higher concentrations of methane, carbon dioxide, oxygen, all these things, but it's off-gas into space, and it has retreated underground. So if you look at millions of years ago, now what carbon dioxide's 0 point whatever 4. I mean, it's a fraction of a percent, and things used to be healthier. Plants can take 10 times the carbon dioxide. They grow faster, need less water. We need this. So it's really a magic moment. Talk about God existing, that right as the Earth starts to slowly lose its atmosphere, it would probably still be a few million years, we come along and are digging all this up and terraforming, geoengineering, putting it back up. It's good, folks. They want to ban cows because they off-gas methane. So do you. Methane helps hold heat in. We're due for another ice age, a 12,000-year cycle.
Well, you know what's funny, Alex, is you go to you probably know this, but if you go to the Newsweek cover magazine or Time magazine in the 1970s,
freezing,
global ice age. That's what they were saying. And if you don't abandon our modern way of life for that, in a different direction, we're going to have a global ice age. More people are going to die this year of 8 times as many people actually this year are going to die of cold temperatures rather than warm ones.
Absolutely.
So these are facts you don't hear in the ordinary climate discourse.
And they also lie. They say
they have no problem
hottest
with
time
that.
ever in Death Valley. No, it's 134. It hit 131 this year. They said Texas, hottest ever, longest spell. And then I went back and looked at the books because I remember playing football in 1990. And they had to cancel 2-a-days because it was 112 and people were dying all over the city of Dallas where I lived. And it was also in Austin. But I looked up the records. They're just lying.
Yeah. So that's I think that's what our pro-American movement needs to learn is we've been lied to 360 degrees so much that it can create the first form of laziness is just believing what you're force-fed. But now our movement understands that you got to reject whatever you're force-fed. And I don't care if it's even force-fed by mainstream establishment on the left or on the right or whatever. Reject what you're force-fed.
Question everything.
Question everything is phase one. But then at some point, you're not going to get anywhere just by sitting and questioning. That's the first step. So that's what I was saying. We've seen the problem with clear eyes. We understand the Pharaoh. We understand to be skeptical. Now I get this. I'm not coming from a place of personal frustration, but when I'm coming on the scene aiming to lead this nation forward, people say, well, you came out of nowhere. Didn't you work at start a biotech company? And at some point, I'm going to say, listen, people, once we see the problem with clear eyes, we can't just spin our wheels and throw our hands up. We need competent leaders who share our understanding of the problem.
Plus the whole power
to actually move this country forward.
The whole power structure came after you. Then they did that whisper campaign that you were really secretly establishment because you're going around networking. I mean, I've met with Bilderberg Group members. I've met with people that are in Davos. Doesn't mean I agree with them, but the whole and you're not endorsing their system.
Hell no,
you're not. So, but the system has come after you.
Yes.
You've been the main target the last 2 debates. That's the endorsement. Just like people go, wait, they're indicting Trump for no reason. That endorses him. You are the next biggest targeted person.
Did you see this Hannity interview last night by chance?
No, I missed it.
Oh, man. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm making the case. I think it's sane that on one hand, absolutely Israel is our ally. What happened to them was wrong. It was barbaric. It was medieval. And of course, they have a right to national self-defense. But I've also said that we should not want to enter a broader regional conflict in the Middle East that doesn't advance U.S. interests because we have to learn from our prior mistakes in this country. And that's arguably not good for Israel, but it's definitely not good for the United States. And so I also pointed to others in the Republican Party, like Nikki Haley, who screech Finish them, talking about Hamas and Iran as though there's no distinction. Finish them. Okay, what are the consequences of that for the United States of America?
I didn't see it. Well, here's
if we
the
take
problem.
Any emotional action. So I think so interestingly, this guy, Hannity, I was very disappointed, comes after me for pointing out that Nikki Haley has made $8 million after her time as the U.S. ambassador to the UN as a military contractor and otherwise. I mean, that was the wake-up call for me, is to see even a purported conservative voice buy into what is the captured establishment super PAC puppetry last night. You should watch this one.
I will. Let me say something.
It was unbelievable.
I'm powerful. Let me say something to Sean Hannity because I know him. Hey, Sean, the border's been completely wide open for 2.5 years. The Border Patrol admits tens of thousands conservatively of Hezbollah and Hamas fighters have gotten across. They've caught a bunch of them. Okay, these are 90% military-age men. Do you know what Hamas will do? They're here in our country. You know what Hezbollah will do? So
it's in the United States of America that we need to worry about.
Look at Black Lives Matter endorsing the attacks on Israel. So we have this problem, and Iran has a high-tech military. And it's not that I'm, quote, scared of Iran, but we need to support Israel, but obviously not have our aircraft carriers attack Iran. And then now we're fighting Russia through NATO, and we're fighting Iran. What's going to happen, Sean? Use your head. This is how World War III starts, just like World War I and World War II. Once more wars start, other people say, hey, they're tied down. China is going to go into Taiwan, dummy, and we can't take on China too.
And the saddest part of this is that if there are Republican presidential candidates who stand to make money off of it, because they're on the boards or have been on the boards of Boeing and are collecting stock options while they're running for president and have had family military contracting businesses and made a habit of making money off their time in government. This is why we have one crime family right now in the Biden family that has sold off our foreign policy to make their family rich. I could care less if you have an R after your name
or a D,
and you're going to do the same thing.
And that's why it's so refreshing when you're on the stage. Because literally, we've said this on air, we've covered it live. I was doing Stephen Crowder. I'm like, Vivek's the only guy I can listen to. This is all talking points, crap. They're all going to do what the military-industrial complex says. And again, military-industrial complex, they said a year ago with Biden in December, we can't give tanks and F-16s and cruise missiles. That'll escalate to World War III. But they went ahead and violated their own RAND Corporation threat escalation boards. So see, your money's not going to be worth anything in your golf course stock options if we have World War III cuckoo. And now China is messing with India. India's got aircraft carriers out there about to go to war. Pakistan will...
We are marching our way to World War III. I am increasingly worried that there are people in the United States rooting for it. And this is our moment to say, hey, we can actually, now we've seen the problem. We can't just spin our wheels and complain about it. We have a chance to lead this country to shut down the deep state, declare independence from China, end World War III and our path to it, protect our own homeland, because that's our job and the moral obligation.
Peace, prosperity, American way.
And then pride. And revive pride in this country. And I think that we have a chance to do it.
Well, you know, the International Bureau of Atomic Science, I forget the exact name of their doomsday clock, and were very respected. They've never moved the clock this close. Mm-hmm. I mean, folks, China and India are basically already at war. Pakistan's ready to go. Iran is already in a proxy war with Russia against us. China's getting ready to move into Taiwan. The minute China's moving all the way down to the Philippines, they're in gun battles with the Vietnamese, trying to take their waters and oil fields. I mean, these are the crazy times that it kicks off, and it's already begun. In fact, most analysts say we're already in World War III. The question is, will it go nuclear? And that's why, Vivek, I am really glad you are the most successful person on injecting these topics, because I see you inject topics at the national level that would have never been there, that are so vital. And so, I mean, they may assassinate Trump. So, you know, I'd like him to get elected, but if not you, I think Kennedy is going to pull more from the Republicans if he runs independent, which he is. So I like a lot of his ideas, but I think it's destructive now. So I'm not going to support Kennedy as a third-party candidate, because that'll pull from the Republicans. Again, I hope nothing happens to Trump, but if something does happen to him,
God forbid, yeah, we don't want that. No. I think what we want is to advance the interests of this country and the people of this country to once again be in charge of who leads our nation.
Absolutely.
That's all I ask. And I'm going to play my part to make that happen. I'm glad we met, man. We met literally 1 or 2 minutes. We chatted before this is the first conversation we've ever had.
Well, I'm impressed. I mean, you were showing up here like 6:45 in the morning. We're taping this, and I hear you're off to the border?
Yeah, I'm going to the border. and then I'm going to New Hampshire. I mean, we're all over the place, but I'm around the clock. So
Well, you're a busy
they're
man.
pulling me out of here, actually.
All right. Well, thank you. Hey, remember,
we're going to Eagle Pass from here.
I'm in internet prison, so Infowars.com. Band.video has all our band videos. Band.video, the book, The Great Awakening. I hope you'll read it. I hope you'll come on my show soon and tell me what you thought. I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank you, man.
Good luck.
It's good meeting you.
God bless you, man. Be safe.
Thank you.
Get your Trump revenge shirt today? You know you want one. Visit runnerranch.com. Go now.